Oh, thanks so much. Great to be at the Freedom Tower. Great to be back in Miami. I want to thank everybody, thank Madeline for her great work. I really believe that when you look around the country at the state and community college level, I don't think there's any institution that is more influential or has the potential to continue to be more than here in Miami-Dade College. I want to thank, I know we got a lot of our board members. Some of you guys have been great. I mean, I see Marcel, just amazing, always a true warrior fighting the good fights with us. And we made promises through the years about what we would do for both Miami-Dade and the Freedom Tower. And I'm happy to say, like all the promises we made, promises made, promises kept. We've delivered on the support for this great, and I'm coming in, I mean, there's horrible traffic getting here. I'm coming in, and you're looking, the skyline or whatever, but you see like a condo building or this, and then you see the Freedom Tower, and the architecture was so much better. It's like we've got to preserve. I mean, we should be doing all the buildings like this. So we're really excited to be able to play a part in preserving this unique institution. And then we've got our education commissioner who's from Miami, Stasi Kamutsis, who's doing a great job, really dropping the hammer on anybody that thinks they have their own agenda that they can do, or anybody that thinks they're going to violate the rights of parents or try to smuggle in ideology. And so I think it's been great what he's been able to do. And yeah, I think we're probably the only state in the country that has a day to commemorate the victims of communism. And as was mentioned by Madeline, there is instruction in the schools that will talk about this. And I think it's important to talk about, in a very clear-eyed way, the destruction, the lives, 100 million dead at the hands of Marxism, Leninism. But I think it's also important that we just recognize the whole absurdity of it all, of the whole idea of communism and Marxism, Leninism. And nobody understood that better than President Reagan. And he used to tell a story about Castro's Cuba. And so for those of you who are exiles or have heard the stories, I mean, this guy would get up there and he would drone on for 4 hours, and basically all the problems they had was all America's fault, and all the others said this is the nonstop propaganda. And these people are basically just forced to sit there and listen and have to endure this, because if they did anything, then they basically be disappeared. It was an authoritarian country. And so Castro's given this speech, and he's droning on and on and on. All of a sudden, and there's thousands and thousands of people there, you hear out in the distance someone yelling, peanuts, popcorn, Cracker Jacks, and people are like, what the hell's going on? And Castro kind of notices it, and then next, peanuts, popcorn, cracker, and then you start to hear this, and he's really flustered. And so finally he's like, all right, I don't know who's saying that, but if you say that one more time, I am going to take your butt and ship you all the way to Miami. And then 2 seconds later, the entire crowd erupted. Peanuts, popcorn, Cracker Jacks. And you can tell what a system does or doesn't do, because the traffic between Cuba and Florida through the Florida Straits was 100% one way. If communism was so good and America was so bad, wouldn't people want to get on a raft and go over to that island? I mean, it's a beautiful island. I have a little bit of experience as a naval officer. I was at Guantanamo Bay for a period of time. And so you see beautiful topography, beautiful coastline. And honestly, had they had a free government these last decades, it would be the most prosperous, country in Latin America, I think, without question. So, so it ain't like this is like in the middle of the desert somewhere where there's just nothing there. This is a great piece, a great island. And so they have this system. And if it's so great, wouldn't one boat have wanted to go to? No. that wasn't. And so sometimes we can talk about theory, we can talk about facts and figures. All you got to do, how did people behave? And there were people that risked their lives to be able to escape Castro's communist Cuban tyranny and come to the United States of America. There was no one who was trying to leave the United States to go there. And it's important that we understand, particularly young people, understand, because I don't think the Cold War was won, all this, but this ideology doesn't fully go away. And it comes back and it's repackaged, and they try to do it under various different banners. And so you have to understand what's at stake here. And I think with America's 250th anniversary approaching next summer, it's a great opportunity for young people to both appreciate the American founding principles and then to see how communism, how Marxism, Leninism is totally at war with the ideals that our founding fathers instituted. And the results, obviously, when you have 100 million dead, that's a pretty poor track record for Marxism, Leninism. But our founding fathers understood a couple things. I mean, one, they believed, and our society is based on the idea, that our rights do not come from the government, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. And so God has endowed individuals with these natural rights. Then the people form a constitution and they loan power to the government to primarily protect the rights that we already possess and to be able to order society in ways that are beneficial. But it's not about government giving you freedom. You have freedom. Government's role is to protect your freedom. And that was really a lot different than what people had thought previously. What does communism think? Well, communism, they don't acknowledge any higher being. The highest being in communism is the Communist Party and the dictatorship that comes from that. And so that's what Castro put himself up as. That's what they did in the Soviet Union. You look at China. What's the most important entity there? What does everything revolve around? It revolves around serving the CCP and the Communist Party. So they don't recognize a superior being or a higher power. So therefore, if they don't recognize a higher power, then as an individual, what is your worth? Well, they can't say we're endowed by our creators. They don't believe that. And so basically, as an individual, you are simply a ward of the state. The CCP in China, the Castro dictatorship, the old Soviet Union, they determine, you know what, there was freedom in the Soviet Union. Honestly, there's some freedom in Cuba, only for the people connected. The people that are connected to the Communist Party, they live like kings, while everybody else lives like peasants. And so, if you know the right person, if you toe the party line, maybe you will be given freedom. But it's all based on the whim of the state. It's all based on what the Communist Party says. And that is totally contrary to what America was founded upon. We had a founding fathers. They didn't do it for themselves. When Castro led the revolution against Cuba, had all these people that they considered themselves kind of more outcasts of society. It was kind of like the proletariat and all the rhetoric or whatever. And obviously that didn't work out very well, but our founding fathers were very accomplished. They were the movers and shakers in the colonies. When they met in Philadelphia and signed the Declaration of Independence, that is not like just emoting on social media like people would be today, or just popping up. This was, they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. And that wasn't hollow rhetoric. If they did not succeed in achieving revolution, the penalty 100% would be death for every single one of them. And so they basically signed their own death warrant, and then they had to win an improbable victory. So they had a lot to lose, and honestly, much less to gain personally, but it was the principle about whether people can govern themselves or not. And you've seen how America, and look, we have ups and downs in this country. We've got problems that we deal with even today, major problems. But no country has given more people more opportunity in all of human history than the United States of America. And that wouldn't have happened unless those folks stood up and fought. And so as part of America 250, we're really leaning into this. We have some of our counties, most of them are far away from Miami-Dade, although one of them is just south of you guys, Monroe. But we've got counties named after founding fathers. And so we've brought a statue of Thomas Jefferson to Jefferson County. We brought a statue of Ben Franklin to Franklin County. I got George Washington. I got a statue, beautiful statue loaned from Mount Vernon that we put in the Florida Capitol. So if you go into the Florida Capitol, you want to go to the governor's office, you hang that left, you see G-Dub right there, looking really good. We're going to bring, and it's interesting because there's all these other states that have different a lot of states not only would not do Victims of Communism Day of Force, they may view it a little bit differently. So it's like they've been taking statues down of America's founding fathers over the last decade. This has been something that's kind of become a cottage industry. So it's allowed us, I'm getting like Alexander Hamilton on discount from some of these states because it's in the basement. We get it, I mean, it should be a $100,000 statue. I'm getting it for $30,000. So we have good opportunities to do this. So we're gonna do Hamilton in Hamilton County, Madison, Father of the Constitution in Madison County, and we are gonna do James Monroe down in Monroe County. I gotta figure out which key we're gonna drop old James in, and so we're working on that. But we really believe that it's important for folks to understand. It's a very important part of human history. And if you look at what they did, people will point out the flaws, this, that. Yeah, I think that's fine. But understand, if they hadn't have done that, you would not have seen different folks succeed across racial, ethnic. They set the principles in motion that has allowed a lot of people to realize dreams over many, many decades and even the centuries. So it's really important that we do that. We're going to continue to do more on that. Now, in Florida, we don't just talk, we act, because I think while words can be meaningful, it's ultimately your deeds that are the most powerful. And so we weren't just going to sit here, do an event at the Freedom Tower, say how bad communism is, and think that we've done our duty. No, we knew that this needed to be something that was enduring and permanent part of our education system. So we were able to sign bills into law doing a number of different things. One, of course, we have officially established November 7th as the Victims of Communism Day in the state of Florida, which is the first in the nation to do that. But we're also leading the effort to educate our students on the evils of communism. We have obviously, we have people in this room who are have firsthand experience with communism. There's people in this room who have grandparents who suffered under communism. And it's not just Cuban Americans, by the way, because Florida is really we've attracted people from Eastern Europe during the Cold War. People that have done that. You see people in South Florida with that as well. So this was, a broad, I'm working with Taiwan on different stuff. And so they know firsthand. And so we've got Taiwanese Americans. We've got a lot of, but our Victims of Communist topics for the students will go over Lenin and the Russian Revolution, Joseph Stalin and what he did during the Soviet. Stalin, if you looked at him the wrong way, you were gone. They would just kill you, like almost on the spot. He was responsible for millions of people dying under his regime. Mao Zedong and the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution. Nobody has a higher body count in the history of communism than Mao Zedong, because he was doing things like the Great Leap Forward, which was trying to centrally plan the economy, and you'd have massive famines, and so people are dropping like flies because they couldn't get any food. And so it was just a total train wreck of policies. And then the Cultural Revolution was really just trying to indoctrinate into the party line and really created a dystopia there. They have to learn about Fidel Castro and the Cuban Revolution and the communist takeover of Cuba. Look about what he was promising when he took power, and then look what ended up happening. One of the most failed episodes in governance in all of human history is the Castro regime in Cuba. And our students need to know that, and they need to appreciate that. Pol Pot and Khmer Rouge, the modern fall of the Soviet Union, as well as Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro and what they're doing in Venezuela, or what Chavez did and what Maduro continues to do. And let's just be clear, none of that probably would have been able to happen without the communist regime in Cuba helping to support that and prop that up as well. So our students are going to go into this very wide-eyed. We think it's important. We're also going to be adding, and I know Stasi will talk about this in upcoming academic years, students to be given instruction on the history of communism within the United States, the domestic communist movements, including tactics that were used. We just had a guy elected in New York City, elected the mayor. I came up to the podium and I quoted Ronald Reagan. He came up to the podium and quoted a guy named Eugene V. Debs, who was a communist. And so you see that. So we will provide instruction on that. One of the things I'm happy about is Senate Bill 1254, which authorizes the newly established Institute for Freedom in the Americas at Miami-Dade College to partner with our Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom at Florida International University, with the goal of promoting the importance of economic and individual freedoms as a means to advance human progress. And they will have a specific focus on how these policies can have a beneficial impact throughout the Western Hemisphere. And I will tell you, we've not had a great run in the Western Hemisphere recently. You look at the leader of Colombia, Brazil, obviously Cuba, Venezuela, always a problem. We've got a couple bright lights in the West. For a while we had, a Prime Minister of Canada who I think was a Marxist too, Trudeau. And his mom was very close with Fidel Castro, in maybe more ways than one. So, so you have this, and it's like, I'm sitting there during COVID, and people are fleeing down from Canada because he's locking down everybody, and they're seizing bank accounts from the truckers, and they're doing all this stuff. And I'm thinking, who would have thought that in North America we would be dealing, with some of this stuff? So it hasn't been a great run. So I think that what Miami-Dade College and what Adam Smith Center will be great for the students first and foremost, and great for South Florida. But I also think it's going to have resonance because people need some inspiration. People need some hope in some of these parts of our hemisphere that things can be better, and they can be better. So I want to thank everybody that's been involved with all of this over the years. I can't think of a place that in this country that has a more instinctive understanding of the dangers of communism than we have in our South Florida communities. So thanks to everybody that's been involved. Thank you to the folks in my administration and in the legislature who've worked really hard to do this. I don't know if we have any legislators here today. I know I saw some people, saw some school. Okay, yeah, great. And then, Gonzalez is here, Commissioner. This guy's really good, Rob Gonzalez and the Commission. So there's been a lot of hard work that's gone into this, and honestly, I even think, I think a lot of this ended up being bipartisan, to be honest with you. So we did have folks in both parties that have supported a lot of this over the years, and I'm just proud to be able to be here and say that today is meaningful. We were a little lighthearted about the Reagan quip, but the reality is this ideology has destroyed communities, families. It's taken lives by the tens of millions, certainly at least 100 million in the 20th century alone. And we can't forget that. And we just got to know, let our students understand what the harmful effects would be, because people can say these things, they can always promise these things, and then it always ends up being the same old song and dance, and it leads to human misery. Okay, our Education Commissioner is going to come wrap it up. The indomitable Stasi Koumoutsas.